Fury said to a mouse that he met in the house, "Let us both go to law, I'll prosecute you. Come, I'll have no denial, we must have a trial, for really this morning I've nothing to do." Said the mouse to the cur, "Such a trial, dear sir, with no jury or judge, would be wasting our breath." "I'll be the judge, I'll be the jury," said cunning old Fury. "I'll try the whole cause and condemn you to death." "You are not attending," said the mouse to Alice. "What are you thinking of?" "I beg your pardon," said Alice very humbly. "You had got to the fifth bend, I think." "I had not," cried the mouse, sharply and very angrily. "A not," said Alice, always ready to make herself useful, and looking anxiously about her. "Oh, do let me help to undo it." "I shall do nothing of the sort," said the mouse, getting up and walking away. "You insult me by talking such nonsense." "I didn't mean it," pleaded poor Alice, "but you're so easily offended, you know." The mouse only growled in reply. "Please come back and finish your story," Alice called after it, and the others all joined in chorus, "Yes, please do." But the mouse only shook its head impatiently and walked a little quicker. "What a pity it wouldn't stay," sighed the lory, as soon as it was quite out of sight. And an old crab took the opportunity of saying to her daughter, "Ah, my dear, let this be a lesson to you never to lose your temper." "Hold your tongue, ma," said the young crab, a little snappishly. "You're enough to try the patience of an oyster." "I wish I had our Dinah here, I know I do," said Alice aloud, addressing nobody in particular. "She'd soon fetch it back." "And who is Dinah, if I might venture to ask the question?" said the lory. Alice replied eagerly, for she was always ready to talk about her pet. "Dinah's our cat, and she's such a capital one for catching mice, you can't think. And oh, I wish you could see her after the birds. Why, she'll eat a little bird as soon as look at it." This speech caused a remarkable sensation among the party. Some of the birds hurried off at once. One whole magpie began wrapping itself up very carefully, remarking, "I really must be getting home, the night air doesn't suit my throat." And the canary called out in a trembling voice to its children, "Come away, my dears, it's high time you were all in bed." On various pretexts they all moved off, and Alice was soon left alone after. "I wish I hadn't mentioned Dinah," she said to herself in a melancholy tone. "Nobody seems to like her down here, and I'm sure she's the best cat in the world. Oh, my dear Dinah, I wonder if I shall ever see you any more." And here poor Alice began to cry again, for she soon felt very lonely and low-spirited. In a little while, however, she again heard a little pattering of footsteps in the distance, and she looked up eagerly, half hoping that the mouse had changed his mind and was coming back to finish the story. Chapter 4. The Rabbit Sends in a Little Bill. It was the White Rabbit, trotting slowly back again, and looking anxiously about as it went, as if it had lost something, and she heard it muttering to itself, the Duchess, oh my dear paws, oh my fur and whiskers shall get me executed as sure as ferrets are ferrets. Where can I have dropped them, I wonder?" Alice guessed in a moment that it was looking for the fan and the pair of white kid gloves, and she very good-naturedly began hunting about for them, but they were nowhere to be seen. Everything seemed to have changed since her swim in the pool, and the great hall with the glass table and the little door had vanished completely. Very soon the rabbit noticed Alice as she went hunting about, and called out to her in an angry tone, "Why, Mary Ann, what are you doing out here? Run home this moment and fetch me a pair of gloves and a fan. Quick now!" And Alice was so much frightened that she ran off at once in a direction it had pointed to, without trying to explain the mistake that it had made. "He took me for his housemaid," she said to herself as she ran. "How surprised he'll be when he finds out who I am. But I'd better take him his fan and gloves. That is, if I can find them." As she said this, she came upon a neat little house, on the door of which was a bright brass plate with the name W. Rabbit engraved on it. She went in without knocking and hurried upstairs, in a great fear lest she should meet the real Mary Ann, and be turned out of the house before she found the fan and gloves. "How queer it seems," said Alice to herself, "to be going messages for a rabbit. I suppose Dinah will be sending me on messages next." And she began fancying the sort of thing that would happen. "Miss Alice, come here directly and get ready for your walk." "Coming in a minute, nurse, but I've got to watch this mouse hole till Dinah comes back, and she'll see that the mouse doesn't get out. Only I don't think," Alice went on, "that they let Dinah stop in the house if it began ordering people about like that." By this time she had found her way into a tidy little room with a table in the window, and on it, as she had hoped, a fan and 2 or 3 pairs of tiny white kid gloves. She took up the fan and a pair of gloves, and was just going to leave the room when her eye fell upon a little bottle that stood near the looking-glass. There was no label this time, with the words "Drink me," but nevertheless she uncorked it and put it to her lips. "I know something interesting is sure to happen," she said to herself, "whenever I eat or drink anything, so I'll just see what this bottle does. I do hope it'll make me grow large again, for really I'm quite tired of being such a tiny little thing." It did so indeed, and much sooner than she had expected. Before she had drunk half the bottle, she found her head pressing against the ceiling, and had to stoop to save her neck from being broken. She hastily put down the bottle, saying to herself, "That's quite enough. I hope I shan't grow any more. As it is, I can't get out the door. I do wish I hadn't drunk quite so much." Alas, it was too late to wish that. She went on growing, and very soon she had to kneel down on the floor. In another minute there was not even room for this, and she tried the effect of lying down with one elbow against the door, and the other arm curled around her head. Still she went on growing, and as a last resource, she put one arm out the window and one foot up the chimney, and said to herself, "Now I can do no more. Whatever happens, what will become of me?" Luckily for Alice, the little magic bottle had now had its full effect. She grew no larger. Still, it was very uncomfortable, and as there seemed to be no sort of chance of her ever getting out of the room again, no wonder she felt unhappy. It was much pleasanter at home, thought poor Alice, when one wasn't always growing larger and smaller and being ordered about by mice and rabbits. I almost wish I hadn't gone down that rabbit hole, and yet, it's rather curious, this sort of life. I do wonder what can have happened to me. When I used to read fairy tales, I fancied that kind of thing never happened, and now here I am in the middle of one. There ought to be a book written about me, that there ought, and when I grow up, I'll write one. But I'm grown up now, she added in a sorrowful tone. At least there's no room to grow up any more here. But then, thought Alice, shall I never get any older than I am now? That'll be a comfort, one way, never to be an old woman, but then always to have lessons to learn. Oh, I shouldn't like that. Oh, you foolish Alice, she answered herself. How can you learn lessons in here, where there's hardly room for you, and no room at all for any lesson books? And so she went on, taking first one side and then the other, and making quite a conversation of it altogether. But after a few minutes she heard a voice outside and stopped to listen. "Marianne, Marianne," said the voice, "fetch me my gloves this moment." Then came a little pattering of feet on the stairs. Alice knew it was the rabbit coming to look for her, and she trembled till she shook the whole house, quite forgetting that she was now about 1,000 times as large as the rabbit, and had no reason to be afraid of it. Presently the rabbit came up to the door and tried to open it, but as the door opened inwards and Alice's elbow pressed hard against it, that attempt proved a failure. Alice heard it say to itself, "Then I'll go round and get in at the window." That you won't, thought Alice, and after waiting till she fancied she heard the rabbit just under the window, she suddenly spread out her hand and made a snatch in the air. She did not get a hold of anything, but she heard a little shriek and a fall and a crash of broken glass, from which she concluded that it was possible it had just fallen into a cucumber frame or something of the sort. Next came an angry voice, the rabbit's. "Pat, Pat, where are you?" And then a voice she had never heard before. "Sure, then I'm here, digging for apples, Your Honor." "Digging for apples indeed," said the rabbit angrily. "Here, come help me out of this." Sounds of more broken glass. "Now tell me, Pat, what's that in the window?" "Sure, it's an arm, Your Honor." "An arm, you goose. Who ever saw one that size? Why, it fills the whole window." "Sure it does, Your Honor, but it's an arm for all that." "Well, it's got no business here. At any rate, go and take it away." There was a long silence after this, and Alice could only hear whispers now and then, such as, "Sure I don't like it, Your Honor, at all, at all." "Do as I tell you, you coward." And at last she spread out her hand again and made another snatch in the air. This time there were 2 little shrieks, and more sounds of broken glass. What a number of cucumber frames there must be, thought Alice. I wonder what they'll do next. As for pulling me out of the window, I only wish they could. I'm sure I don't want to stay in here any longer. She waited for some time without hearing anything more. At last came a little rumbling of cartwheels, and the sound of a good many voices all talking together. She made out the words, "Where's the other ladder? Why, I hadn't to bring one." "Bill's got the other. Bill, fetch it here, lad." "Here, come put 'em up at the corner." "No, tie 'em together first. They don't reach half high enough yet." "Oh, they'll do well enough. Don't be particular." "Here, Bill, catch hold of this rope." "Will the roof bear?" "Mind that loose slate." "Oh, it's coming down. Heads below." Now who did that? It was Bill, I fancy. Who's to go down the chimney? Nay, I shan't. You do it. That I won't, then. Bill's got to go down. Here, Bill. The master says you've got to go down the chimney. Oh, so Bill's got to come down the chimney, has he? Said Alice to herself. Why, they seem to be putting everything on Bill. I wouldn't be in Bill's place for a good deal. This fireplace is narrow, to be sure, but I think I can kick a little. She drew her foot as far down the chimney as she could, and waited till she heard a little animal, she couldn't guess what sort it was, scratching and scrambling about in the chimney close above her. Then saying to herself, "This is Bill," she gave one sharp kick and waited to see what would happen next. The first thing she heard was a general chorus of, "There goes Bill!" Then the rabbit's voice alone. "Catch him, you, by the hedge." Then silence, then another confusion of voices. "Hold up his head. Brandy now, don't choke him." How was it, old fellow? What happened to you? Tell us about it. Last came a little feeble, squeaking voice. That's Bill, thought Alice. Well, I hardly know. No more, thank you. I'm better now, but I'm a deal too flustered to tell you. All I know is something conies at me like a jack-in-the-box, and up I goes like a skyrocket. So you did, old fellow, said the others. We must burn the house down, said the rabbit's voice. And Alice called out as loud as she could, If you do, I'll set Dinah on you. There was a dead silence instantly, and Alice thought to herself, I wonder what they will do next. If they had any sense, they'd take the roof off. After a minute or two, they began moving about again, and Alice heard the rabbit say, A barrowful will do, to begin with. A barrowful of what? Thought Alice, but she had not long to doubt, for the next moment a shower of little pebbles came rattling in the window, and some of them hit her in the face. I'll put a stop to this, she said to herself, and shouted out, You'd better not do that again, which produced another dead silence.